A year ago, Joe Gibbs said he hoped he would not have to compete against Kyle Busch. Well, he's having to do so this year. Now, Sunday at Sonoma, Joe Gibbs' driver Martin Truex Jr. won, but Kyle Busch was second. And that's something that Joe Gibbs knows that he's going to have to contend with the rest of the season. So, bringing my NBC Sports colleagues, Jeff Burton and Kyle Petty. And Jeff, I'll start with you. Kyle Busch, with what we've seen this year, is this a man on a mission, or what are we seeing out of the start that he's had with 3 wins at the beginning of the season here?
Well, look, Joe Gibbs was right, and Joe knew the talent that he had in Kyle Busch. He knew it. Everybody knew it. The question was, because of the lack of success that Kyle had over the last several years at Kyle's level, the expectation we all had for Kyle. Was it Kyle? Was it the car? Was it a combination of all these things? Like, what was it, right? And so there was enough doubt in everybody's mind, and I'll tell you, probably even Kyle Busch's too. Like, where was he at this stage in his career as a driver? Well, we now know. We now know that Richard Childress Racing has really good equipment. We now know that Kyle Busch, given the right equipment, can still get it done. So, now everybody goes to work and tries to address that. How does Joe Gibbs battle against Kyle Busch? How does Richard Childress continue to improve and make themselves better? So there were a lot of questions. I mean, and that's hard to say about Kyle Busch, who's many of us believe is one of the best drivers in the history of the sport. Where was he? But Kyle has seen it. I've seen it. Drivers decline over time. Richard Petty wasn't the same driver his last 5 years of his career that he was early in his career. Neither was I would say neither was Dale Earnhardt. There was a lot of guys that had diminishing returns later in their career. I know I damn sure did. So we didn't know where Kyle Busch was, but we have those answers now.
Yeah, and listen, I think you gotta look at Joe Gibbs and say he looks at the sport a little bit different. He come from a sport where when a quarterback has a bad year and then starts the next season bad, chances are you need a new quarterback. And you looked at Kyle Busch's record over the last couple of years. It had fallen off. It was not the Kyle Busch that we expected. I went on record and I said it, and listen, I've eaten more crows so far this year, so I'll throw it out here. I said a move for Kyle Busch to Richard Childress Racing was lateral at best, but I looked at it almost as a step back. Kyle Busch has proved me blatantly wrong, just dead butt wrong. I did not see their equipment being where it is today. I did not see them being able to go out and win 2 or 3 races and be a championship contender. And I think they're building that team into a championship contender. Let's look at it. Austin Dillon is still running exactly the same this year as he did last year. All they did was plug and play with Kyle Busch. So I've got to give Kyle Busch a lot of credit for that. I've got to give Andy Petrie. I've got to give Richard Childress going out on the weekend of the limb there and saying, I'm gonna get Kyle Busch. I'm gonna make this team happen. I give a lot of credit to Richard Childress for going out there and making that commitment to Kyle Busch. So when I look at this team, this is a team of a lot of people who want to prove everybody else wrong. Kyle Busch has always wanted to prove everybody. Listen, when he had his wreck and he sat out so long, he wanted to prove everybody wrong, that he could come back stronger, and he came back and won a championship. That's his nature. That's why people love and hate Kyle Busch. But I look at this team and I say, man, this is the surprise for me of this year. I cannot believe that they started this strong and have been able to maintain that effort. If anybody didn't want to break over Father's Day weekend, it's Kyle Busch and RCR. They wanted to keep that momentum going because they're on a little bit of a wave right now.
Hey, Kyle, I got 2 words for you. Randall Burnett.
Yeah.
Like we and nothing against Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick is a really, really good race car driver with an incredible future. Tyler Reddick is the guy that made everybody look and say, wow, Reddick is really, really good. Randall Burnett is the guy that has taken Kyle Busch from a driver that wasn't winning consistently to one that is. Randall Burnett and Richard Childress Racing, that team is for real. That team is a contender for the championship. And, when all this started happening, remember the conversation, Randall Burnett, we know he's going to go with Tyler Reddick. That's what everybody thought because that duo was very successful. Well, guess what? Randall Burnett can do it with Kyle Busch too. and he has submitted himself as one of the best crew chiefs in the garage. And Richard Childress, as he always does, finds a way to get himself back to the top. Top priority for Richard Childress is do not let that guy get away.
Well, you mentioned Randall Burnett, 6 wins in the last 35 races, more wins than any other crew chief. So he's certainly doing it with Tyler Reddick and Kyle Busch. Let me ask you guys here quickly from a driver's perspective. We know how good Kyle Busch is. We know how good that team is. But this is an era where you have typically maybe 20 minutes of practice at the track. We talk about the communication between driver and crew chief. That's not a whole lot of time for a driver and crew chief to work. Now, I know there's simulator, I know there's SMT data, but what is it about this? Because to me, that makes it even more impressive. What they're able to do is the challenges they face. And Jeff, I'll start with you. What do you see out of that, and how they've been able to make it work in this era where it's 20 minutes of practice, whereas, it was only a few years ago, you get 3 practice sessions, 2.5 hours on track time before a race.
You know what makes it really important? What the most important thing that there is, if you have 20 minutes of practice, is when you hit the track, your car's got to be good. And, Kyle Busch talked about last year that the limited practice was a disadvantage to him. The reason the limited practice was a disadvantage is because for whatever reason, whether it was his feel or the setup or whatever it was, he did not like what he was driving. And so when you are behind and you only have 20 minutes to fix it, I don't care who you are. It's very hard to do. So when you roll off the trailer and your car feels reasonably good, that is what makes 20 minutes of practice work or not work.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, I'm going to use the word commitment. I think commitment to the process, commitment to making things better, commitment to making this a winning team. And we know, we mentioned Randall Burnett, we know he's a winning crew chief. He did it with Tyler Reddick. They committed to make that 8 team the winning team over at RCR Racing. When Kyle Busch came, they made that commitment further. I'll go back to watching practice on Saturday. Okay. And Kyle Busch is sitting on pit wall with a notebook in his lap and a diagram of the racetrack, going corner to corner and writing down notes corner to corner. That's old school. That's old school communication. That's old school commitment. That's old school to say, this is where I'm at. This is what I feel. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to show you. You can go back through the notes and look at the data and look at everything. This is what I'm telling you the car is doing. So I think with that 20 minutes of practice or whatever you may get, you got a couple of old school guys that go back at it a little bit, use the tools they have, and for whatever reason, they are committing or they are clicking. But they have made that commitment to go out and make the process work, and they're working the process right now.
Hi, I'm Parker Kligerman. For more access like this from Pit Road, be sure to click and subscribe to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube channel.